The courtroom fell, deathly silent, the words hanging heavy in the stale air. "Get out! We don't serve your kind here." The judge's voice cracked like a whip, sharp and unforgiving. Eyes shifted nervously, some widening in shock, others avoiding the gaze of the young black man standing alone before them. He didn't flinch, not outwardly. His hands rested calmly on the table, fingers splayed but steady. Around him, polished wood gleamed, a cold monument to centuries of authority and tradition. The murmurs softened into whispers, the crowd holding its breath, waiting to see if the boy would crumble. The judge leaned back in his chair, a smug smile curling at the corners of his mouth. His eyes glittered with contempt, like a man who had never faced challenge before, confident that his power was absolute. "You're in my courtroom now," he sneered, "not the streets where you belong." The young man's eyes locked onto the judge's, calm and unyielding. Inside, a quiet, storm-brewed, years of dismissed complaints, whispered slights, and broken promises. But he held himself with steady resolve, shoulders squared, breathing even. A sharp bang echoed as the gavel came down, silencing any attempt the boy might have had to speak. The judge's dominance filled the room, but beneath the surface, something shifted. The young man reached slowly into his jacket, pulling out a folded document. The courtroom leaned forward in unison as he unfolded it carefully. A law degree, worn at the edges, but official. The judge's eyes flicked down, disbelief shadowing his face. Then the teen's voice broke through, quiet but cutting. "I earned the right to be here, Your Honor." A hush fell, thicker than before. No one moved. The weight of the statement settled like a curtain, shutting down the arrogance that had filled the room moments ago. The boy was not just another defendant. He was a challenger, someone who had fought the system from within. Behind that calm exterior was a fighter, ready to overturn every assumption, every prejudice. The courtroom, once a symbol of unchecked power, held its breath, waiting for the next move. The room was quiet, but the silence was heavy. Papers shuffled on desks, voices hushed behind closed doors, but here no one spoke up. "Another complaint dismissed," a voice murmured in a dim hallway, barely audible. Files piled up, ignored, forgotten. The names on those pages were more than ink and paper. They were people whose pain had been buried beneath layers of indifference. No one wanted to hear, not the ones in power, not the ones who kept the doors closed. The weight of those silences pressed down on him. He felt them, even now. He remembered the long waits, the doors that never opened. "We looked into it," the officials always said. But investigation meant nothing when the answers were predetermined. No justice came for those who looked like him. It was a system built to protect itself, not the people. And the judge, his arrogance shielded by silence, by the nods of colleagues who turned their heads away. The walls held secrets whispered in shadows, favors exchanged, evidence lost, lives discounted. A subtle cut, a glance, a dismissive smile. Those small moments left scars deeper than any shouted insult. The microaggressions that no one noticed, but everyone felt. It was the way a clerk ignored his eyes, the way a lawyer's tone shifted when he spoke. Small cuts, invisible to most, but enough to break a man down piece by piece. He carried those wounds silently, like armor forged in quiet pain. In a newsroom, a low voice spoke. "This story isn't over yet." The reporter's eyes scanned the documents, sensing something bigger beneath the surface. There was a truth waiting to be told, one that would shake the foundations. But telling it meant risking everything, reputations, careers, safety. The air was thick with hesitation. Still, the spark flickered. An investigator sat alone, staring at the files, his hands trembling. He knew the truth was there, clear as daylight. But the institution was a fortress, and his voice felt small against its walls. Could he stand against the silence, Or would he become just another shadow in the hallway, a silent witness to the wrongs? Late at night, a soft voice crossed the line. Keep fighting, no matter what. It was a mother's strength wrapped in quiet hope. The words settled deep inside him, a steady flame against the cold winds of despair. It was the reason he kept going, the reason he refused to be broken. Memories surfaced. Courtroom losses, whispered betrayals, moments when the system slammed the door in his face. Each setback carved new resolve into his spirit, teaching him the rules of a game rigged from the start. He learned to fight in silence, to carry dignity like a shield. Behind the judge's confident smirk, cracks began to form. A glance at a phone, a hesitated breath, a fleeting doubt in his eyes. The public's watchful gaze was peeling away the layers of arrogance, exposing the man beneath the mask. The fortress was weakening. Then came the moment captured on a phone, his calm defiance frozen in pixels. The judge's sneer, the boy's quiet strength. The video spread like wildfire, igniting whispers that grew louder each day. The walls that hid injustice trembled under the heat of public outcry. Allies shifted uneasily, their eyes avoiding his. Voices softened, support waned. The judge's protective circle began to fracture as those who once stood silent started to step back. The power that once seemed unbreakable showed signs of collapse. In the courtroom, beneath the formalities, a charged silence took hold. Exchanged glances, held breaths, subtle sighs. All spoke louder than words. The pressure mounted, inching, closer to a reckoning that no one could escape. Through it all, he held firm. The urge to shout, to storm, was swallowed by calm dignity. His strength lay not in anger but in stillness, a quiet reclaiming of space long denied. In this silence, he spoke volumes. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Cameras angled from every corner, their lenses hungry for the story everyone was waiting to unfold. Activists sat with quiet determination, their faces a mix of hope and weariness. The community watched through screens, eyes wide, breaths held. A sea of silent witnesses filled the space, the air thick with tension that no one dared to break. Whispers buzzed just beneath the surface, like the calm before a storm. Every gaze was sharp, every movement weighted with expectation. The walls seemed to lean in closer, holding their breath along with the crowd. The judge shifted in his chair, beads of sweat tracing a slow line down his temple. His eyes flicked nervously to the side, searching for some relief, some sign that this moment would pass quickly. But the weight of so many watching pierced through his facade. The confidence that once seemed unbreakable began to crack, imperceptibly at first, then more visibly. His jaw tightened. His hands trembled just enough to betray the calm he desperately tried to project. The arrogance that had long cloaked him now felt thin, vulnerable under the burning spotlight of scrutiny. The young man rose slowly, voice steady but charged. Your Honor, justice is not a privilege to be granted selectively. It is a right denied too long. The courtroom fell deeper into silence, hanging on the strength beneath his calm tone. Each word carried years of unheard pain and silent battles. His presence was quiet but commanding. No anger in his voice, only the unyielding truth of lived experience. Those watching could feel the shift, a tremor running through the room as the boy's resolve anchored itself in the space. The judge opened his mouth to interrupt, but hesitated, faltering. His usual grip on control slipped as the words settled like a hammer. The courtroom was no longer just a stage for his authority. It was a crucible, exposing the gaps between law and reality. The veneer of control shattered with every second of the boy's unwavering gaze. Power was no longer one-sided. It was a fragile dance of exposure and resistance. Suddenly, a voice rose, steady and raw, cutting through the thick silence. I know what he's been through. I lived it too. A formerly silent victim stepped forward, bringing with them the weight of unspoken stories. Their testimony breathed life into statistics, humanizing the pain that many had ignored. The courtroom shifted again, faces softening, some nodding, others gripping their seats tighter. Empathy stirred quietly, shaking foundations that had long seemed immovable. Outside the courtroom, the story exploded. Hashtags trended, faces lit up social media feeds, and public figures spoke in support. The moment transcended its walls, becoming a movement. Narration filled the gaps, capturing flashes of viral outrage and the hope riding on the wave. The courtroom's drama was no longer isolated. It was a beacon for a broader call to justice. Every tweet, every shared video, every spoken word added fuel to the fire that would not die down. Inside, the judge's mask slipped further. Thoughts raced uncontrollably. Fear pricked at his confidence. His smile, once forced and practiced, faded into a twitch of defeat. His hands shook beneath the desk, a silent confession of unraveling power. The slow collapse was more devastating for its quietness, a man falling apart without a sound. The arrogance that defined him was crumbling under the weight of undeniable truth. Desperate, he reached for legal maneuvers meant to reclaim control, but they faltered. The evidence, the witness, the rising public scrutiny dismantled his authority piece by piece. No amount of rhetoric or procedural tricks could patch the growing hole in his facade. The courtroom watched as the system's bias, once hidden in shadows, was pulled into the glaring light. Justice was no longer a distant ideal. It was unfolding in real time, raw and unfiltered. When it was time to speak again, the young man's voice held a calm dignity that silenced even the murmurs. "I'm not here to win today. I'm here to change the system." His words carried the weight of history and the promise of the future. The narration captured the moment as a crucible, where personal triumph fused with collective hope. In that stillness, the courtroom, and perhaps the world, felt the tremors of change beginning to rise. A quiet buzz passed through the courthouse halls, the kind that carries a secret too heavy to shout. "He's been suspended," someone whispered, almost afraid to speak louder. The judge, once untouchable, now sat sidelined by his own missteps. The ripple spread slowly. An investigation launched, faces in the legal community shifting uneasily, caught between relief and disbelief. Change was on the horizon, subtle but undeniable. It was not a victory shouted from rooftops, but a murmur in the quiet corners where hope had been long buried. The system, long guarded by silence, was cracking. Walking the streets of his old neighborhood felt different now. Familiar faces offered nods of recognition, some shy smiles that spoke more than words ever could. It was as if the air had softened, the weight of history less suffocating for a moment. He passed by worn storefronts and faded murals, reminders of battles fought quietly and loudly. The respect was not loud, but it was there, in glances exchanged, in a hand briefly lifted in greeting. A soft glow after a long, hard night. At home, he sat alone, flipping through old photographs. Each picture was a chapter of struggle, a courtroom moment, a family gathering, a quiet protest. They told the story of resilience, battles fought, against odds stacked high. His fingers traced a worn image, lingering on a moment of victory that felt distant but real. These were reminders that every scar carried meaning, every loss taught a lesson. He held those memories close, a shield against the loneliness that sometimes crept in. A neighbor's eyes caught his for a heartbeat before dropping away, heavy with years of unspoken tension. The silence between them spoke volumes, past grievances, unspoken apologies, cautious hope. Slowly, the neighbor extended a hand, tentative but sincere. He took it without hesitation, the small gesture bridging a chasm too wide for words. Sometimes healing began in moments like these. Fragile, imperfect, but real. His phone lit up with empty messages, blinking insistently without reply. No words, just the ache of silence from someone he once held close. The absence of response was a quiet weight, filling the space where conversation should have been. It spoke of distance, of barriers not yet crossed, of hope mingled with regret. In that silence he found a mirror to his own solitude, the loneliness that justice often demands. The quiet moments revealed the cost of standing against the tide. Victory brought no peace without scars, no rest without remembering. The solitude was a heavy companion, an echo of battles fought and won, but never forgotten. The weight settled deep, a reminder that change came slowly and the fight was far from over. There was dignity in this loneliness, a testament to the price paid for justice. In the stillness, his thoughts turned inward. Resilience was not just strength, but quiet endurance. No insult, no slight could break the dignity forged through years of struggle. The journey was unfinished, the road ahead long and winding. Yet within him burned a steady flame, a resolve to keep moving forward, to carry the fight beyond the courtroom walls. This was his promise to himself and to those who walked beside him. Justice is patient, he whispered to the empty room. It waits for those who refuse to be silenced. The words lingered like a vow, a quiet call to action. Around him, the world began to shift. Murals rose on brick walls. Protest signs waved softly in the breeze. Schools spoke of promise and renewal. Change, slow and steady, was seeping into the cracks. And with it, a new hope took root.